What's up, mamas? I'm Rebecca. You are watching the Reseller Mom Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it, and I'm excited to bring you another video in the series How to Hire a Virtual Assistant for eBay and Poshmark. Today's video is all about hiring a virtual assistant. So I'm going to share with you all of my tips and tricks and everything I've learned over the last 3 years of working with virtual assistants and how I have hired them myself. So if that sounds good to you, please continue to watch. This channel is all about how to get more done, make more money, and stay sane while raising kids and reselling online. And if that sounds good to you as well, I would love it if you would subscribe. Let's get into the video. So these are the things I'm going to cover. You need to obviously think about your task that you want a virtual assistant to help you with. You need to create a job description. You need to know how and where to find a virtual assistant, set up your hiring process, things that I think you should consider, and things that I wish that I had done differently is how I will end this video. So starting with the task, you need to decide what exactly you want help with. What do you want them to do for you? What do you need help with? And for me, I feel like an easy to train repetitive task is something that is the best place to start. Once you get started with working with a virtual assistant and you find someone that you can trust, you'll be able to possibly build on tasks for them to help you with from there. So for me, the first task that I started with was sharing my Poshmark closet because it was easy to train. It's literally just clicking buttons. It's a repetitive task. It's on a schedule, and it's something that I could easily give up control over. So if that's something that you're looking to get help with, that is what I would recommend starting with. And take your time to craft. So think about all the aspects of that task and how you are going to fit in a virtual assistant into your general workflow. So for me, I knew about the point that I got to, I think it was about 1,600 listings in my Poshmark closet. That's when I decided to hire someone. I actually started with someone locally. They worked remotely for me, so it is basically like a virtual assistant, but I did not find them through the normal virtual assistant ways. I found them on a local Facebook group. And I would recommend starting that way as well. We can talk about that more during the hiring process, but basically just figure out the task that you want them to help you with and put some thought into it on the front end so that it will save you time and you'll be more confident in your communication once you hire a virtual assistant. So some other things obviously they can help you with is listing or some admin financial type things. And so I started with sharing, then I added in listing, and then I had them help me with administrative, operational, and financial tasks. So I would say make some notes, take your time with creating the task that you want them to help you with because we're close to it. We do it every day. So think about it from an outsider's perspective. And I would also, when you're making notes on what you want them to do and creating the task itself, I think you should give that information to someone you know and trust and have them read it over. Someone that doesn't know Poshmark or eBay or reselling, and have them review the task that you're putting together and give you feedback and see if they can follow the directions that you're putting together, because that's a good test to see if a virtual assistant will understand what you're trying to communicate. So the next thing is taking the task and turning it into a job description that you're going to post. And so again, what help do you need? Who needs the help, an outline of the task, the requirements for the job, and what the hiring process is. So these are all of the things that, in addition to the actual task, you need to include, or I at least included in my job description. So for what help do you need? I always just start very simple, like I need a virtual assistant to help me do administrative data entry tasks for my online fashion business. Something like that, something basic and simple. Who needs the help? And I put, I'm a stay-at-home mom that needs assistance in building my business. You can put more information, you can put less information. I just always felt like giving them an idea of who I am, what I'm doing, and why I need their help is a nice way to start the relationship. An outline of the task. So here you want to include what the actual duties are. And again, if it's just a simple sharing task for Poshmark, sharing my Poshmark closet, promoting my items in the feed to future customers, things like that you can use to describe the task. But you want to give them an idea of what the duties are, how many times they're going to share, how many items they're going to list, what spreadsheet they're going to maintain. Put all of the information outlined there. So this isn't a training, but it is a description of the task. You also want to include anything about the schedule. So if you want them to share your Poshmark closet at a certain time every day, at multiple times a day, on certain days of the week, if there's tasks that you want done daily versus a task that you want done on a weekly basis, can they completely do it at their whim and you don't care what time it's done and it's completely flexible? That's also something to make note of. How long it will take them to complete the task. You want to give them all of the information to decide if they want to apply for your job. And it will help you on the front end. The more clear you are in your job description, the more qualified applicants you're going to receive, and that will save you time and effort when you're reviewing them. So if you don't give them a lot of details up front, you may get a lot of people that just apply for all kinds of things, and so they're not going to be a good fit for you, and it would be a waste of your time to review their application. And then just anything else that's involved in the task that you want them to know about. Then moving on to requirements. So for me, initially I put that they needed an internet connection. And I remember the very first VA that I hired, she always had problems with, my internet was down today. I had some slow internet issues. The internet had a problem today. And so it kind of interrupted her duties and her work in completing her task and sharing. And so I then changed my job description to include requirements are a reliable, fast internet connection. And I don't know if that helped or whatever, but the next ones that I got, I haven't had any problems with, and it just made me feel better to continue to improve my job description as I had learning experiences with hiring virtual assistants. It made me feel like I was fine-tuning what I was putting out there and finding the right candidate. I also include reliability. And I mention in my job description that I rely on them to help me build my business for tasks that I cannot do myself. And I let them know that when I hire them as well, so that they understand how important they are to my business and how if they don't show up for work that day to complete the task, it causes a problem for my overall business. And next is the hiring process. So I do try to put them through a couple of hoops if I can. One of the things that I do is in the job description, I provide some sort of direction so that I can see if they follow directions and read through the job description, and it helps me weed out people. So if they don't follow that specific direction, then I don't even consider them any further. And one of that is to include their cover letter. If they don't include one, I don't review their information. The other thing is I put 2 questions, and it could be as simple as, why do you want this job? What do you like about being a virtual assistant? Do you have another job that you can refer to that is similar to this one to show your experience? It can be a very easy question, but I put 2 questions, and that way I can see off the cuff something that they've prepared just specifically for this job application and what their response is. It helps me understand, is their English good? If you're hiring a foreign virtual assistant, it helps me understand if they're following directions, if they complete the questions or not. And it helps me just get an understanding of how much thought and effort they would put into a quick answer like that. So then I also include what the timeline is to start and how the payment works. So if you work through a service like Upwork.com, which is what I typically use and what I'm most familiar with, all of the payment is done through their processing. So it's very easy. But I do say, I pay every 2 weeks on a Saturday or something like that. That way, up front, I'm clear about, how they would get paid for their work. Moving on to how and where to find a virtual assistant. So Upwork.com, and this is not sponsored by them, though if they want to sponsor me, I'd love that. Upwork.com is where I have found basically all of my virtual assistants, with exception to one that I hired very in the beginning, which was through a local Facebook group, and I hired her, and she's in the area. She worked for me remotely for a short period of time, and that helped me kind of fine-tune how to work with someone, where I was able to actually speak with her on the phone. She was US based, of course, and it was nice to be able to kind of understand how I was going to bring someone into my business for the very first time, without having any language barrier or any time zone issue with working with a foreign VA. You can find them on Instagram. I have upcoming a review of working with reseller assistants, and I will share the great experience I had with them. You can find them on Instagram at reseller assistants, and I'm sure there are other virtual assistants that promote their services on Instagram as well. You can find them on onlinejobs.ph. I have not used this service, but I have heard in the community that many people have. And then also Fiverr as well. And I've used Fiverr for a few things previously, and so I guess you could say I've used them for a virtual assistant, but none of it was for my, eBay Poshmark business. It was just for random other like graphic design type work. There's, I'm sure, lots of other ways to find a virtual assistant. These are just some of the places that I know about. I will say just a note on Upwork.com. I have nothing bad to say about it. I think it's fantastic. I like that it's kind of a service that you work through, and so whether or not, if there were an issue, it would actually be helpful, I don't know, because I haven't really had a major problem, but I feel better going through a service, and knowing that I can, have the recourse of a company that's a third party working with me. Or I think my second choice would be working through something like Reseller Assistance on Instagram, where you're working with an actual person directly and you can talk with them and reach out directly. So those are the two, places that I'm familiar with and that, I would certainly recommend. So the hiring process, depending on, this is kind of going through Upwork.com basically, because that's the process that I used when I hired my virtual assistants. So obviously you need to create an account with, the software or the website that you're using. You need to create your job description, which we already discussed, and now you need to put that in and basically post a job. And the job description is only one part of posting a job. You're actually able to go through and set some filters up to show who you are allowing to apply for your job. And so the job description itself is one aspect of that, but then you want to kind of think about some of the things that go into posting a job. Do you want a US based, or are you open to a foreign worker? Do you want someone that has a lot of experience and therefore might be a little bit more expensive in their rate? Or are you open to somebody that's new and maybe you have to train, but they are, their rate is a little bit cheaper? Are you willing to work with, like, there are virtual assistant services that list on Upwork.com, and so they have a team of people that you can work with. I usually choose to work with an individual person, but there is that, option for you. And so there's just a lot of things that you can think about and make filters for when you're posting a job. Then once you post the job, you will be getting applicants in. All of that will go through the system, and it will show you, how many, and I may do like an actual how-to step-by-step the next time I hire someone, but I didn't need to hire anybody today, so I didn't share that as far as like step-by-step on the actual website. But the next stage is basically reviewing candidates. And here I just have a few notes because for me, I feel like it's all a crapshoot. So I go with my gut. And I'm pretty ruthless. Like, I will if there's something, one word that I don't like, one little hint or feeling that I don't like in their application to me, I get rid of them. Because usually you get a good amount of candidates, and so you need to whittle it down to begin with. But if there's something that's not sitting right with you, it's not going to sit right with you later. So you want to just be ruthless. Don't take it personally. Don't, at this point, they're somebody that's applying for a job, and yes, that's important. And I do take having someone on my team, I weigh that responsibility, but at this point, they want to be on your team, and you need to make sure that you're finding the right fit for your team, for you and for them. And so it makes sense to do your best on the front end to find that person, and, throwing out the people that are not going to be a good fit is the first place to start. So use your gut, be ruthless, rule people out. Did they follow your directions? How fast did it take them to apply? Sometimes I put out a job post and I'll get people within the hour, and I'll get like 4 or 5 resumes within the hour. And most of the time, it's somebody in that batch that gets hired. Not always, but most of the time I've hired from that very first pool, because they're people that are actively looking, they're on top of it, and they're hungry. Somebody that applies later, obviously it could just be a timing thing, but I feel like people that are very active within this, Upwork.com or whatever system you're using, it's good to be working with those people that are active. How active are they? So in Upwork.com, it can show you when they last logged on. So like, I don't necessarily want someone that didn't log in for the last month, and it shows you, were they active in the last couple of hours? Were they active in the last week? So I think that's good. And then, of course, I look at their past work. Many of them have examples of their past work depending on the types of jobs that they've done. So you can review like a portfolio, basically. You can review their actual resume. You can review their cover letter if they send it, if that's what you ask them to do. You should be reviewing the answers to the questions that they answer if you asked them to send a response. And so you want to review all of this and then basically make a short list. And once you have a short list, these are the people that you're going to really be thinking on. So for me, I usually try to make a short list of just 4 or 5. That way I can basically rank them, because just because you want them then doesn't mean that they're going to end up taking the job. So you want to have a few options. I try to put 4 or 5 on my short list. I rank them, and then I start to reach out to them. Maybe I want to ask an additional question. Maybe I just want to have one more communication with them before I make a selection. So I've shortlisted them, I'm thinking about them, and I might take a day or two. I try to make the hiring process overall quick, because I think it's important to do it quickly. 1, because I need the help, and 2, because I want that person to feel like I want them to come into my business quickly, and that I'm on top of things, that I take everything seriously, and that I'm active as well, which is what I want from them. And so I try to lead by example in that regard, and that, I'm being accountable to them and letting them know about this job as much as I want them to be a part of my team and be accountable to me for the task. So once I've ranked them and I reach out, ask anything else, then you just kind of hope and pray that you make the right choice, and you're able to, follow the steps in the system to basically offer it to them. They can accept, and once they do, then you can start communicating with them and start the onboarding process. And for me, once I select and hire someone and make the offer and they accept, then the onboarding process for me is very important, because these are your first steps to making a positive, hopefully long-lasting relationship with this person that you have now selected to be part of your team. And I take that really seriously. And even though it's just me, I have a small little tiny business that I do from home, I do think of it as a company, and that person is relying on you now for work, for support financially, for their life and for their family, and I take that very seriously as well. And so whether it's just hiring them for one project and then, that's it, or whether it's an ongoing relationship where they're going to be, let's say, sharing your closet in perpetuity. I take that really seriously, and there's even more that I want to do with my onboarding process, but for right now, with the time that I'm able to give, I think what I do is pretty good, and maybe I'll do a future video just on that, and talk more about it in the managing video that will be coming up next. But for onboarding, the basics are that you want to set up your communication. So you want to let them know when you're going to communicate, how you're going to communicate, what you need to be communicating about, what they should be communicating to you. And again, if it's something that's a simple sharing task, you may not need to have a lot of communication. You may say, I want you to share twice a day for me at this time in the morning, at this time at night. Here's the login. This is what you do. And, maybe you don't need to check in with them all of the time. But for me, I like the communication. I like to know that they feel that I'm here and that we're working together and that, we're checking into our virtual office together, basically. So we usually communicate through Facebook Messenger for me because I don't sit at my computer all day. I've got the little guy, we're out and about. I like having the sound of the dinging Facebook Messenger, and then I can physically see the notifications on my phone so that if they do have a question or they do need me, I'm able to see it in multiple ways, see it and hear it, rather than communicating in any other way. So for me, Facebook Messenger is how we communicate. I get all of their information. I get their email address. Obviously, we connect on Facebook. I send them some general information. So I have like a training document that I send them. I also have them sign my little silly version of, a confidentiality agreement, and a scope of work that basically states that I'm providing them access to my account. That access is to be used specifically to do X, Y, and Z job, and that password is not to be shared, changed, or I don't even know what I say in it anymore. It's been a long time since I've looked at it, but just basically a couple of rules, as far as giving them access to my account. And I make them sign it and I make them send it back to me. Now, I don't know if it is enforceable in any way, but it makes me feel better to send it. I hope that it lets them know that I take everything seriously, that, I would try to have some sort of recourse should they do some sort of crazy thing with my account, and that they're going on record and signing it. Should anything bad happen, I don't know how that would work, but I feel like just going through the process of it just kind of puts a tone out there. So I don't know if that's real or not, but that's what makes me feel better. And so then I start the training process, and I'll go through more about training in my managing a VA video, which would be the next video in the series coming up next week. So I'm not going to get into training now, but part of your onboarding process is providing good communication and good training for your virtual assistant so they know exactly what's expected of them. They all want to do a really good job. I'm sure there are some that are better than others. I've been really blessed to have great virtual assistants that have done a really good job, and most have worked out for a year or longer. I have 2 that are currently with me. I've probably hired between 6 and 8 actual different virtual assistants, and I think the most I ever had at any one time was 4 or 5, helping me with different aspects of my business. So definitely, think it's worthwhile, think that they can help you a lot, and have kind of fine-tuned my hiring process over the last 3 years doing this. And the next thing is things to consider. And so I wanted to start with the nitty-gritty of the process first, and then now I'm kind of going back to some big picture things that I considered before starting and pulling the trigger on hiring a virtual assistant, because again, I do take it very seriously. Do you need or do you want a virtual assistant? When is the right time for you and your business? Do you want an experienced or inexperienced virtual assistant? And that basically lends itself to, do you want to train someone or not? Do you have the time and ability to train a virtual assistant? Do you have the time to manage a virtual assistant? And can you afford a virtual assistant? In general, you're going to make less money in the beginning because the whole idea of hiring someone into your business, virtual assistant or otherwise, is to help you get more done. And I definitely think that they do. But in the beginning, you are going to spend time and effort to train them, to onboard them, to answer questions, to keep track of them, to watch what they're doing and making sure that they're doing it right, and providing feedback. So it is an investment up front in both your time and your money and your brain power. And if whatever is going on in your life or whatever is going on in your business is not going to allow you to do that, then it may not be the right time for you to hire a VA. You may want to think about that going into it. I know I did, and I really underestimated how much time and effort a virtual assistant was going to take from me in the beginning. And then I kind of learned over time, kind of like, all right, I'm going to hire somebody else. Now I already know what the process is going to be like. And obviously they're all different. Different people have different needs. And so you may have some that are very autonomous and won't bother you at all. You have some that won't feel comfortable asking you questions, and you kind of need to anticipate that. And then you have others that ask you a million questions. So you need to think about that as well. But do you need versus do you want a virtual assistant? I feel like there's a lot of talk about it in the community. I'm also in the print on demand community, and so there's definitely a lot of talk about it there, maybe almost less of it in the reseller world. And so it's not that there's a pressure to have one, but maybe you feel like, maybe you feel like your business is at a point where you should or could take on a virtual assistant before you really should, because other people are doing it. Or you see someone else's experience and you think it's going to be the exact same way for you, and that may not be the case. So I think you should just think about some of these things. Do you need a virtual assistant because you literally cannot get any more done in your day? And so the only way to grow is to have a virtual assistant help you. Do you just want a virtual assistant because you want to do less work and spend more time with your family, or that summer vacation, the kids are going to be out of school, you're not going to have as much time to devote to your business, and so you want someone to come in and alleviate tasks that you would be doing anyway so that you have more free time. And I would also encourage you to think about when you get that freed up time, once the process with a virtual assistant is going, what are you going to do with that free time? So for me, I always knew that if somebody was going to take the 45 minutes to an hour that it took for me to share my closet away from me, I was going to use that to either list or to do some other task for the business. So when my virtual assistant is sharing, most of the time I'm not just farting around. Most of the time I'm doing some other task for the business so that I really feel that time has been now duplicated by having a virtual assistant. Now, I will say, when the virtual assistant shares my Poshmark closet at night, that's usually when I'm laying on the couch, half brain dead, probably falling asleep, because I get up at 4 in the morning. And so when I have my virtual assistant share my closet at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time for, the last party and all of that, I am not doing something for the business. And it's nice to know that during that time, when she's sharing, I'm relaxing and work is still being done and sales will still come in overnight as a result of that share in the evening. So for me, I kind of do it both ways, but I do think you should think about the time so that you feel, conscious in the effort of what you're doing by hiring a virtual assistant. As far as when is the right time, I don't think there's, it's different for everyone. For me, when sharing the closet on Poshmark took more than an hour, or about an hour, that is when I decided to bring someone in, because I could not devote that hour, and I felt like I could get so many other things done in that hour, rather than sitting there clicking buttons. And so it was an easy, repetitive, easily to train task that I could offload to someone else that would allow me to do other things that would move my business in the right direction. As far as an inexperienced or experienced VA, this really just lends itself to, are you hiring someone that already knows how to do the task or not? And you can go either way. Initially, I hired someone that did not know how, and I had to train her, but I felt good about training her the way I wanted it done. And I felt like because it was the first time I hired a virtual assistant, I kind of wanted someone that didn't know what they were doing so that they wouldn't know that I didn't know what I was doing. And it wasn't that I didn't know the task, because of course I knew the task, but that I didn't know what I was doing as far as like managing a virtual assistant. And so I felt like having somebody that was more new would make me feel more confident to lead her along in the process. And that worked out for me. And now I'm not scared to have somebody that's experienced because now I'm experienced too. So that's my thought on that. Do you have the time and ability to train? So be honest with yourself. Like, are you willing to train someone? Do you have the actual time to train someone? And do you want to train someone? It's nice to be a reseller and do your own thing all the time. Once you bring on a VA, it's not just you anymore. Now you have a coworker or you have an employee. Even though they're not technically an employee, you have someone that's relying on you and looking up to you for leadership and for information on how to handle the task. And like I said, I take very seriously the fact that they rely on me to possibly be able to provide for their family. And I think it's important to remember that because they're not just some random person in cyberspace somewhere. They're a real person that lives somewhere that has real life things. And, I try to remember that as much as possible. And I want to make sure that I give them the proper tools and resources they need to do the job for me. And so I always make sure that when I'm bringing a new person on board, that I devote kind of like in my head, the mental space that for a week or two, I'm going to have to devote some attention to this person, and provide them with answers to questions, show them the task again and again, or what have you. And then, do you have time to manage a virtual assistant? Again, it's front loading and investing your time in the beginning will give you more freedom in the end. So for the first couple of weeks, you're going to need to handhold them. But then after that, the one VA, most everything we have is basically on clockwork now, but we do have a lot of things to talk about throughout the day. We'll message each other throughout the day because she does so many things for me that usually there's something that comes up here or there that we need to discuss. However, her brother, who just does sharing for me a couple of times a day, I really don't talk to him anymore. Like, he lets me know when he's sharing. He shares. I kind of keep an eye. And then he lets me know when he's done. And I don't really respond. I don't have to say anything. I tell him when it's payday. If there's something I want to do to make a change to the schedule, I'll message him. But for the most part, we don't even really communicate that much anymore. It's just an autopilot thing, and he does his work. I see he's doing it. I pay him. And that's very nice because that is a true time saver. Now that I've gotten him trained up and settled, he does not require any time from me, but the work is still being done in exchange for the fee that I pay him, and it works out very nice. And can you afford a VA? So, again, you're going to not get the time back until they're set up. So you're going to front load your time for the first couple of weeks in training them and getting them set up. You're not going to be doing extra business tasks. So it's kind of like you're paying them, but you're also doing the job as well. And so in that time period, you have to make sure that you can afford it. Because if you think, okay, well, I'll take a VA on, they'll do this, and I'll put up an extra 10 listings, and so therefore I'll be making more money, and so that's how I'll be able to afford them. That doesn't work. You have to know that you have money for them to pay them for at least a little period of time, whatever you decide that is. So for me, I always make sure that at the beginning of the month, I have enough money to pay my virtual assistants for that month. I'm not always on a month-to-month basis, but I also don't like to just keep a lot of cash sitting around waiting to pay them. I know that I have consistent sales. I know that I have a decent amount of consistent sales to where I'm liquid. But if you're just starting out and maybe you're not making consistent sales, or you don't have, a reliable way to know how much money you're going to have, then I would make sure that if you're going to have them work for you regularly, that you have 1 or 2 months of their salary set aside so that you don't have a problem, so that you're not stressed out about how are you going to pay them if your sales are not providing the money that you need. So that's just something to consider as well. So let's see what I would have done differently. I definitely would have hired help sooner. I think especially with sharing on Poshmark, I could have hired someone a lot sooner for a little amount of money and gotten more done, put up more listings, sourced better, done more research, things like that. And so for my personal situation, I definitely would have hired help sooner. Initially, I would have also put more thought into my job description. My first job description that I put up to hire a VA was very basic because I didn't know what to expect. Now, over the course of hiring a handful of them, I've learned different things and have fine-tuned my job description to, what works for me. I feel like it covers all the bases I've discussed here now, and I feel like it provides a really accurate and clear picture of what the job is, and that helps me find the right person. And the more I can be more accurate and clear about what the job is, the better the person I think I will find. So if you can put some extra thought into the job description and really kind of walk the steps in your head of what you want done, how you want it done, when you want it done, and all things we discussed earlier in this video, I think that will really help you in the end. And then I do think it would have been nice to learn a little bit more about hiring a virtual assistant, how you can get virtual assistants, what virtual assistants get paid, how to manage a virtual assistant. I wish I had all of that, and that's why I decided to make this video series. So if you're watching this and you haven't watched the other videos, I definitely would encourage you to do that and just get yourself as familiar as possible with the world of working with a virtual assistant. There's other videos besides mine out there on YouTube. You can always message me with questions, and I'm happy to help answer them. I think that the more information you have, the better, and the more confident you are will show to your virtual assistant, and I think that will lead to a better overall experience. I think when you're not sure, you don't know what to expect, you don't know how to project confidence to them, and so that just leaves things up in the air. Maybe they think they could get away with something, maybe they're not going to take the job as seriously, maybe they're not going to be as reliable because you're not setting the tone that you know what the heck you're doing. In short, is what I think about that. So moving on, I would really love your help because I've done this video. The next video is going to be a managing video, so all about managing a virtual assistant specifically. And then the final video in the series, or at least for now, because I may add future videos in the future, but for what I'm planning to do right now, the last video in the series is going to be a Q&A video. So what I would love is any actual questions that you have, leave them in the comments below, and I will include them in the video and answer them in the video. And so it's just going to be a video of your questions. And so if you can do that for me, that would be fantastic, because I feel like that's where I could probably be the most helpful, is answering specific questions. So I would love any of your questions in the comments below. And here are the other videos. So it only gave me 3 options to stick here, but I have actually another video. So the first video was 10 tasks that my virtual assistants helped me with. The second video was story time and my experience with hiring virtual assistants. This is the hiring video. The next one will be the managing video, and then the final one will be the Q&A once I get all of your questions. So I appreciate your watching. If you're with me till the end, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. I really hope that this is helpful to you and will help you feel more confident in hiring a virtual assistant and will help you make that leap to adding someone to your team that will really help you grow your business, because at the Reseller Mom Show, we are all about getting more done, making more money, and staying sane while raising kids and reselling online. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.